Rama Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vacharam pangam langyate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining in our ongoing discussions of the Bhagavatam. We'll conclude our discussion on the 17th chapter of the 4th canto. Maharaj Prithu becomes angry at Mother Earth. So we went through this discussion of how Mother Earth gives earlier on a set of reasons why Prithu Maharaj should not try to harm her. And then Prithu Maharaj counters with reasons why he should punish her. And then Mother Earth surrenders to Maharaj Prithu and gives her prayers. So we have completed the prayers. The only thing that I wanted to share is a little bit of analysis on the prayers of how they're addressing the anger of Prithu Maharaj, because Mother Earth is now in a different mood, that she's not trying to reason with him, but is surrendering to him and trying to appease him and pacify him. So in response to the anger of Maharaj Prithu, in verse 29, Mother Earth prays that I now understand your real position as a personality of Godhead. You're beyond the modes. So by praying to Maharaj Prithu in his position as the personality of Godhead, she's at one point indicating that he cannot be touched by anger, because anger is a symptom of the modes, and also praying to him that you are the Lord, you're transcendental to the modes, so please do not be angry to me, to one who is surrendered to you. So Prithu Maharaj might respond that it is not out of anger, but because of justice that I desire to kill you. So in verse 30, Mother Earth says that you're the protector for everyone in the material creation. Hence, you should also protect me. Other than you, I have no other shelter. So even if Maharaj Prithu is approaching her out of justice, Mother Earth is saying that because I have taken shelter of you, you should protect. It's just like the entire material creation has taken shelter of you. So Prithu Maharaj might say that, yes, it is true that I am the protector, but I am also the destroyer. So in response to this implicit question in verse 31, Mother Earth says that while you're famous as the creator and the destroyer, but at present you're the maintainer. So she's saying that this is not the time for you to destroy. When the time for you to destroy comes, then by all means destroy me. But right now, the time is for you to be the maintainer. Therefore, you should not destroy me. So Prithu Maharaj might say that you're right. I'm currently in the role of a maintainer, but even as a maintainer, I'm always destroying those that are sinful. So then Mother Earth in verse 32 says that I do not deserve to be killed because I'm irreligious. Your actions are difficult to comprehend by embodied beings, and thus I am bewildered. And then in verse 34, she says that here is an example of your contradictory actions. In the past, as Varadev, you protected me. Now you're ready to kill me. So we see the surrender of Mother Earth deepening. Then she says that whether you're creator, maintainer, or destroyer, you're independent to do whatever you want. I know that I'm not irreligious, but your actions are difficult to comprehend. So she's pleading ignorance. So Prithu Maharaj might say that ignorance is no excuse for performing sinful activities. And Mother Earth responds in verse 35 that my seeming transgression is not directed against you. Just like you are a protector, I too am the mother of the citizens who reside on me. Because they have been acting irreligiously against you, I wanted to teach them a lesson by withholding my grains. This is simply to rectify them. So Prithu Maharaj might say that, and yet I stand before you, ready to kill you. So in verse 33, Mother Earth says that you are everything. You are the creator, the maintainer, and the destroyer. You are full of contradictory energies. I can never understand you, but I surrender unto you. And in verse 36, she says that even though I may try to understand your actions and explain mine, in the end, I can never do so. Therefore, I am simply surrendering unto you. So this conversation is very interesting in the way that an exalted devotee of the Lord takes shelter of the Lord, takes increasing shelter of the Lord. So initially, Mother Earth was withdrawing the grains because she felt that the citizens did not deserve it. And then she sees Maharaj Prithu ready to punish her. And then she earlier on uses logic. I'm a woman, I'm a cow, you're a king, etc., etc. And Prithu Maharaj defeats all the points of logic. And then she prays. And in the prayer, we see an increasing mood of surrender. So essentially, she is saying, I may have used logic. And in my mind, I may have done the right thing, or I may not have done the right thing. But at the end of the day, I am simply a soul surrendered unto you, asking you what to do. When Mother Earth demonstrates this mood of surrender, Maharaj Prithu immediately abandons all anger. And Srila Prabhupada says that even the anger, Maharaj Prithu would never have killed Mother Earth. So even the anger was to teach a lesson. Just like Lord Ram would never have destroyed the ocean. It was simply to teach a lesson. And the lesson that comes across is that for a devotee, one should be ready to surrender despite how the Lord is behaving. Sometimes devotees, when they're practicing devotional service, they face setbacks. And they begin to question the protection of the Lord or the Guru. They begin to reason within themselves that I have been following the regulative principles, I have been chanting, I have been preaching, so nothing wrong should happen to me. And yet it is happening. How can I understand that? Or they go to their spiritual master and say, you explain to me why this happened to me. But this pastime gives us these two important lessons, that the Lord is inconceivable, his actions are inconceivable, And the only thing the devotee can do is to continue to surrender, which is what Mother Earth finally does. And then everything becomes glorious for her. So this concludes the chapter. To summarize quickly again, the chapter begins with Vidur's further inquiries from Maitreya and about what happened after Maharaj Prithu appeared. Maitreya talks about Maharaj Prithu getting angry at her and chasing her as she assumes the form of a cow. Then Mother Earth gives the reasons that she should not be killed. Prithu gives counter reasons, and the chapter ends with Mother Earth offering praise to pacify Maharaj Prithu and surrendering unto him. So these three sets of reasons given by Mother Earth why she should not be killed, given by Prithu Maharaj why she should be punished, and finally praised by Mother Earth. I've summarized them in a table, and I'll share them with Prem Kishore Prabhu, and he will share with you later on. Okay, so we can now move to the 18th chapter, Canto 4. So the title of this chapter is Prithu Maharaj Milks the Earth Planet. And this is also a relatively short chapter with 32 verses. And most of the verses do not have a purport. So it's mostly narrative in the chapter. So the chapter is divided into three parts. The first part, set of 11 verses, is Mother Earth advising Prithu Maharaj on the method to milk her. Then the next set of 17 verses is a description of Maharaj Prithu and other personalities milking the earth. And the last set of 4 verses is the establishment of planned cities by Prithu Maharaj. Okay, so we'll start with 418.1. Maitreya vacha itaham prithum abhishtuya rusha praspuridaataram punaraha manirbhita samstavyatmanamatmana. The great sage Maitreya continued to address Vidur. My dear Vidur, at that time, after the planet Earth finished her prayers, King Prithu was still not pacified, and his lips trembled in great anger. Although the planet Earth was frightened, she made up her mind and began to speak as follows in order to convince the king. So from verse 1 to 11, we will see Mother Earth advising Prithu Maharaj on the method to milk her. So we also see that if a person is angry with another person, then the only way to rectify the situation is for one of the person to pacify the other person. Now, in this case, of course, the stature is different. Prithu Maharaj is the personality of Godhead. So it behooves upon Mother Earth to pacify him. But in all other circumstances also, whether it's between peers or even if a person has a superior position, if the situation is vitiated with anger, then responding to anger with anger just makes the situation worse. Responding to anger with logic may not make the situation worse, but it does not help. The only thing that would help is by responding to anger with love. And Mother Earth she has now assumed the position of a loving and a caring devotee of the Lord. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Mother Earth, after fixing her mind with intelligence, so anger is a symptom of loss of intelligence. Now, of course, Maharaj Prithu was not in the mode of ignorance anger, but Mother Earth, even though she's an exalted demigod, but she's conditioned. And she could understand that if she responds with anger, her intelligence will get vitiated. So instead, she uses her intelligence to fix her mind. To do what? To pacify the Lord. And then she speaks. Verse 2. Sanneya chabivo manyam. Sorry. Sannesa chabivo manyum nibodshravitam chame sarvatah sharamadate yatha madhu karo buddha. My dear Lord, please pacify your anger completely and hear patiently whatever I submit before you. Please turn your kind attention to this. I may be very poor, but a learned man takes the essence of knowledge from all places. Just as a bumblebee collects honey from each and every flower. So we see here Mother Earth is praying to Prithu Maharaj to control his anger and listen to her. So the nature of the intelligent person is that they take the essence from everywhere, regardless of the source. So she uses the analogy of the bumblebee. So the bumblebee will collect honey from each and every flower. Whether the flower is growing in a dirty, marshy area, or it is growing in a garden, or it is growing in a pot for the deities, and the bumblebee will collect the honey from each one of them. So Mother Earth is saying that I may be in a low position. Not maybe, she's admitting. She's saying that I'm in a very low position. I have no qualification. But you are great. You are an exalted personality. And the nature of exalted personalities is that of a bumblebee. That they will extract the essence despite the lack of qualification of the source. So she says, I am fallen, but please, if what I am saying is of any value to you, I am requesting you to accept it. In practical terms, we see that how a mood of humility, it diffuses anger. And really speaking, that's the only thing. Anger cannot be diffused by logic. Anger cannot be diffused by anger. Sometimes people say that when the other person is angry, then you should ignore or neglect the person, let the anger go away. That also does not work, because then the person does not have an outlet. The issue is still unresolved. So the anger still grows. But taking a position of humility diffuses the anger, and it also allows the person to address the issue at hand. And we see that how when Mother Earth is now speaking from a position of humility, Prithu Maharaj will treat her in an exactly opposite way, with so much of love and affection. In verse 3, Asmin loke tattvamusmin munubis tattvadarshabhi drashta yoga paryuktascha pumsham shreya parishadhyaye. To benefit all human society, not only in this life but the next. The great seers and sages have prescribed various methods conducive to the prosperity of people in general. So, Mother Earth, so Maharaj Prithu might say that if you are not, as you are saying, very intelligent, then why are you expecting me to trust the words that will come from you? At one point, you're saying you're not very intelligent, and then you're saying you listen carefully to what I'm saying. So she's saying that I am not saying this. I'm simply saying what? Munubis Tattvadarshava. That those who have seen the truth, Munubis Tattvadarshava. Right? Tattvadarshava is, we see that same term in 434 in the definition of a guru. So those who have seen the truth, those who are exalted personalities, they have said that in order to give prosperity in this life, asmin loke, and in the next life, amshuna. So what needs to be done to give prosperity in this life? Agriculture. And what needs to be done to get prosperity in the next life? Sacrifices. So these are the instructions, right? So she is aligning herself to the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. That cycle of yajna. Demigods give rain, from the rain comes grains, from the grains comes vitality, sacrifices are performed, the demigods are nourished, they give rain, and the cycle continues. So she's saying Asmin Loke Amusmin. So she's presenting the same underlying fact over here. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the word so this is Prabhupada quotes this verse once in a while to establish the need to rely on authoritative sources. Shruti Smriti Purnadi Pancharatik Vidivana Ekantir Harer Bhaktir Utpati Eva Kalpute. So this actually appears in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Rupa Goswami actually quotes it as one of the four principles of sadhana bhakti, and the original source is Brahma Yamal. So in his purport to this verse in Nectar of Devotion, Vishwanath Chakravarti also he goes on to explain something that at least it bewildered me a little bit, because when we look at the Dashavatara, we see that Lord Buddha is one of the avatars, but we don't worship Lord Buddha. We don't worship Kalki that much also, but we don't reject Kalki. But on the other hand, Prabhupada and the other acharyas, they openly reject Lord Buddha while accepting the fact that he is one of the Dasavatars. And Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that the reason that it is Shruti Smriti Purnadi, that Lord Buddha spoke what was not in the Vedas. Because he rejected the Vedas, he is not worshipped. So the point is that even if the Lord rejects the Vedas, then one should not follow. So Lord Buddha, of course, is Shakti Veshavatar, he is Jiva, empowered by the Lord, and there's a reason why he rejected the Vedas. So that's the reason. Because he rejected the Vedas, Vishnu Chakravarti says that the Vaishnavas do not worship Buddha or do not support the worship of Buddha. Srila Prabhupada then gives 3 practical instances where deviating from the Shruti and Smriti had negative consequences in both material and spiritual life. So he talks about protection of women. That the scriptures talk about protection of women, but in the contemporary society, because the women are not protected, the fabric of the society is getting corrupted. The second example that he gives is that of the United Nations. This is an example that he gave often, that he said the United Nations can never be successful because they're trying to unite without a common umbrella. So, universal brotherhood is only possible when you acknowledge singular parenthood. So unless you acknowledge the presence of Krishna as the personality of Godhead, you can never hope to have unification. And Prabhupada very often spoke strongly against United Nations, saying that they're promoting an atheistic perspective and all they do is politics, but they can never unite the world because the fabric of the unification is acceptance of a singular father, which is Krishna. And then the third point he talks about is spiritual education, that as long as the education is not based on the bona fide scriptures, if it comes from speculation, if it comes from people's own vested interest, it will continue to destroy the spiritual life of those who are unfortunate enough to be caught into it. So the theme of the purport is that one should follow the scriptures. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that if people follow the injunctions given by the great sages, Shrutis and Smritis, they can actually be happy in both this life and the next. Unfortunately, rascals are manufacturing so many ways and means to be happy. Everyone is inventing so many methods. Consequently, human society has lost the standard ways of life, both materially and spiritually. And as a result, people are bewildered and there is no peace or happiness in the world. Although they are trying to solve the problems of human society in the United Nations, they are still baffled because they do not follow the liberated instructions of the Vedas. They are unhappy. So people have this attitude of rejecting the old in favor of the new, because they always think that new is better. So once a person goes to a restaurant and orders a soup, the waiter says that since we have opened 5 years ago, you are the first person to order this kind of soup. And the person immediately said, I don't want it. So similarly, one likes to join old established colleges, those who are intelligent. So actually the term Ivy League refers to the fact that the colleges are old. So because the colleges are old, they have the walls of the colleges are covered with the creepers of the ivy plant. That's how they got the name. They were Ivy Leagues. So those who are in knowledge, this is material, of course, but still those who are in knowledge, they understand the value of something that is old and tried and tested. The person who went to the restaurant He was intelligent. He could understand that new for the sake of new is useless. The fact that nobody had taken their soup for the 5 years that the restaurant is open means that there is some problem with it. So new for the sake of new is not worth it. But then Prabhupada says, unfortunately, in spirituality, people are always looking for what is new. New kind of yoga, a new mantra, a new way to explain what is life all about. Prabhupada at one point says that by definition, a muni is one who agitates the mind. And what does he agitate it for? Basically to reject the findings of the previous munis and present their own. And then they become established. So this verse essentially, Mother Earth is being properly situated. She is taking shelter of what has been said by the Munibis Tattva Darshidu. That because I am telling you what has been told by ancient sages, I know that this will give Asmin Loke prosperity in this life and Amushmi, that it will give prosperity in the next life. Okay, moving on, verse 4. Tanatishtati yaha samya upayan purvadashita avarashadayopeta upeyan vindatenjasa. One who follows the principles and instructions enjoined by the great sages of the past can utilize these instructions for practical purposes. Such a person can very easily enjoy life and pleasures. Prabhupada in the purport says the word avara means inexperienced is very significant in this verse. Every conditioned soul is inexperienced. Everyone is abodh jat. So jat means born and abodh means ignorance. Prabhupada says born a fool and rascal. So what is the hope then? So the hope is that the person may be inexperienced, but if he puts faith in the right authority, by following the method showed by the previous authority, then he can easily transcend his own experience. His experience is because of the 4 defects. But if he trusts the right authority, then he is as good as personally having transcended the 4 defects, even though he hasn't. But because he is trusting one who has, then it is as good as him transcending the 4 defects. So the Vedic scriptures, Mother Earth says, can help one attain prosperity in this and the next life. So Prabhupada continues in the purport that the process of chewing the chewed, punah punas charvita charvanam, will never make human society happy. In order to make all human society happy and prosperous, we should accept the standard methods given by liberated persons. So interestingly, the instructions for material and spiritual conceptions are opposite. So chewing the chewed indicates that you're doing what the others have done. So this is condemned based on the principle that following a blind person will lead one to fall into the blind well. Thus, the principle that is being glorified is not that of following per se, but following a person who is properly situated. That's an important distinction to understand. That in this pastime, in this conversation, blind following is not being recommended. What is being recommended is that one should follow after ascertaining that the person that they are following is properly situated. And this is further explained in the next verse. Verse 5. Tananadritya yo vidvan arthanarbate swayam tasya vibhicharantyartha arabdacha punaha punaha. A foolish person who manufactures his own ways and means through mental speculation and does not recognize the authority of the sages who lay down unimpeachable directions is simply unsuccessful again and again in his attempts. So in verses 3 and 4, we see that Mother Earth speaks about the results of following the proper authority. Here she talks about the results of not following the proper authority. So, aradascha puna puna, that such a person falls again and again. So, puna puna indicates that the person is falling not because of his lack of trying, but because the method is fundamentally incorrect. So, puna puna means that the person falls, he gets up and tries again, but then he falls again, and then he tries again, and then he falls again, which means that there is no lack of attempt on the side of the person. But the reason that he's failing is that the method that the person is following is one that will inevitably cause him to arabadas, will eventually cause him to fall down again and again. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions the importance of following a liberated person. So where does one find a liberated person? Srila Prabhupada notes that a liberated person is one who is himself following the instructions of a liberated person. So in a way, it becomes a bit of a catch-22. That who is a liberated person? One who's following the instructions of a liberated person. So how do we know Srila Prabhupada is liberated? Because he's following Bhakti Siddhanta. How do you know that Bhakti Siddhanta is liberated? Because he's following Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinod Thakur. But at some point, that needs to be established that the person is liberated on his own. And that's why the parampara needs to originate from the personality of Godhead. So that's how the person can ascertain that yes, Brahma is following Krishna, Vyasadeva is following Brahma, Narad is following Brahma, Vyasadeva is following Narad, and then so on. And then we know that Prabhupada is following somebody who's following somebody who's following Vyasadeva. So ultimately, this assurance of liberation comes because of the unbroken disciplic succession that is emanating from the personality of Godhead, who is standing by himself as liberated. Krishna does not need to follow anyone to be liberated. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that Lord Chaitanya therefore says, by my order you become a spiritual master. One can immediately become a spiritual master by having full faith in the transcendental words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by following his instructions. So now if you look at this closely, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that by my order, one thing, and the second thing that he's saying is become a spiritual master. So the first part is an essential prerequisite. By my order. Now, when Mahaprabhu is saying by my order, it means that you are surrendering to all the orders of Mahaprabhu. So then the second part becomes valid. that one who has surrendered to the Lord is qualified to become a spiritual master. So often this phrase is used to indicate that Mahaprabhu is saying, by my order, you become a spiritual master. So the person says, okay, now I'm a spiritual master because Mahaprabhu has ordered it. And they speculate and they teach whatever they want to teach. And they say, well, Mahaprabhu said, by my order, become a spiritual master. But no, actually, if you're surrendering to that order of Mahaprabhu to become a spiritual master, it also behooves you to surrender to all the orders of Mahaprabhu. And then when you have surrendered to Mahaprabhu, then you become qualified to follow the second part of the instruction, which is become a spiritual master. Prabhupada says that even a peon may deliver $1 million if the peon is properly connected to the organization. And then with humility, he says that Prabhupada says that I myself may not be perfect, but because I'm following the instructions of those that are perfect, anyone can become perfect by following me. So we see Prabhupada making these statements that if you have to go back to Godhead, all that you have to do is to follow me. And he's not saying that out of pride or out of arrogance, but he's saying that out of humility. Why is he assuring his followers the ultimate destination? Because he is following himself those who are perfect. And that's how he knows that when somebody follows him, they can also become perfect. Okay, I'll do one. This is the end of that section. So let me pause here and see if you have any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This is Nandagopal Das. Please accept simple obeisances. When I was reading this, what crosses my mind in the purport was, although the advice is to follow the predecessor acharyas and the scriptures and things like that, but it becomes so difficult. Our tendency is to not to follow. Quite often we do our own things. At least I notice for myself. I'm talking about myself, and I also observe how my children are, how the related people who are, how they always wanted to do their own things, not wanting to follow the system. So what is that? Why is that? And is it this a conditioned nature? Can we say just simply it's a conditioned nature, or how to understand how to bring back to following the instruction rather than not doing that? What is that necessary?
Thank you, Prabhu. A very good observation. And you're right, because of the conditioned nature. It's like if you go to a prison, everybody has committed some crime there. That's why they are in prison. So because when the jiva has a rebellious nature, comes to the material world, that nature is there with them. So the nature to question authority, the nature to be envious, the nature to be independent, that's the root cause of the fall down, and that stays right there. So there you're right. How to counteract it is where we begin our process of spiritual advancements through sadhana bhakti. So while our intrinsic nature may be to rebel, but if we submit to the rules and regulations, they will protect us. So our nature might be to perhaps do things whimsically, eat whatever we want to do, eat or spend our time in any way we want. But simply by accepting the rules and regulations of prescribed that have been prescribed to us, it curtails that nature. It's like when children are in school, their intrinsic nature is to be naughty. But the school establishes rules and regulations, no talking in the class and no fighting with one another. They may come out of the class and be naughty, but while they're in the class, they're not. And then that trains them to not be naughty. So our biggest protection right now is the framework of the do's and the don'ts that are provided to us by our spiritual masters through the instructions of Sadhana Vaidhi Bhakti. And then as we practice it, then our intrinsic nature begins to, not the intrinsic nature, but our conditioned nature begins to change. And so even if you take your own example, you're initiated, and there are some things that you will do whether your mind is cooperating or not. You may have a tired day, you will still chant 16 rounds. Maybe they're not the best quality rounds. But I know if there are other people who are not initiated, and they will not chant on so many days, saying, I'm tired, I didn't want to chant bad rounds, I thought I will not chant. And when people start telling me that, I know that it's just a matter of time before they will give up chanting. So it starts off by the mind telling them that you should chant good rounds. Today you're tired, don't chant. Better to chant good rounds. And then pretty soon, on every other day, the mind is saying that not a good day for you to chant. But one who has submitted, taken that vow and submitted to that vow, whether your mind is in a good place or not, whether your rounds are coming good or not, you will still chant them. And then inevitably what it results in? Good quality chanting. Right? So that's the protection that we have.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Two questions, Prabhuji. One question is Mother Earth knows Prithu Maharaj to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the beginning, Prabhuji? Or at some point his actions made her understand?
So based on, it does not say, so there's no point where Mother Earth says, now I realize that you are the personality of Godhead. But Vishwanath Chakravarti does say that when Mother Earth hears the proclamation by Prithu Maharaj that if you will not support the citizens, I will support them. Right? Because at one point, you remember, Mother Earth was saying that if you kill me, I'm the boat on which all these people who you call your citizens, they're surviving on the boat that I am. So I am providing them physical support and nourishment also. So if you kill me, they will all be destroyed. And Prithu Maharaj said, don't worry. And not only will I support them physically, I will also provide them with all the sustenance. And Vishwanath Thakur said that Mother Earth now realizes that she is talking to the personality of Godhead.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. My second question, Prabhuji, you explained very beautifully about how to counter anger. Like we gave the 3 scenarios, how generally people respond is like anger with anger and anger with logic, and then with love or humility. But here I was having a question that when you mentioned that if the one other person is angry, the only way we can do is to pacify him. In our day in, day out, generally we encounter so many people. Sometimes they may fake their anger also to get what they want. So do we need to always pacify them? Or we can Because pacification, it looks like somebody is crying, and we always say, don't worry, kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, the point you're making is, the answer is of course no. That just because somebody is angry does not mean that you submit to the person, right? That's setting a bad situation. But the purport of the discussion over here is the mood of Mother Earth. So look at it this way: that when Maharaj Prithu was angry, then she first tried to argue with him. Right? She was trying to counter it with reason, and she could not win. Maharaj Prithu defeated her by his superior logic, and then she basically surrenders unto him, and the anger goes away. So, if you take this to a practical situation, that you are in a situation where the other person is angry with you, what are the options that you have? If you become angry at the other person, is it going to help the situation? No. If you apply logic, then it may suppress the person's anger. You may defeat the person with superior logic, but it will suppress the anger. And Prabhupada would say that in preaching, there is time to use logic and there is time to give prasadam. Right? Person is angry, say, okay, have some prasadam there, right? Which is an expression of love that gives some prasadam. So this interaction is essentially how to diffuse the situation. It's not necessarily how to resolve the situation, right? There's a difference. So if you respond to anger with humility and love, the situation becomes diffused. Then you can apply logic, then you can apply reasoning, whatever you can do. Mother Earth and Prithu Maharaj is a little different situation, because Prithu Maharaj is always right. His personality of Godhead, he's always right. But at least the process used by Mother Earth can be understood. At least the situation can be diffused with humility. I'm reading this book by Giriraj Maharaj, and there is this situation in which this person who's trying to cheat Prabhupada, and is very, very angry at Prabhupada, that you're trying to drive me from my house and this and that. And Prabhupada says, that, what do you want me to do? He said, you come to my house personally. Don't send your disciples. You come to my house personally. Take the picture of my father in your hand, and walk with that picture out from my house to my new house. Then I will leave the house. And the disciples were a little diffident telling Prabhupada about this, but ultimately they said, Prabhupada said, okay, no problem. He went to the house personally. He took the picture of his father. He walked to the place. And that next thing you know is that person is falling at Prabhupada's feet, begging for forgiveness. Prabhupada could have said, and that person was basically a rascal, he was a Shudra. He wanted to show everybody that how he had subjugated this big Swami who has foreign disciples. He wanted to, for all the wrong reasons. Prabhupada knew all of them. But he could have responded anger with anger and said, who is he, this, that, let him do this, I will file a case against him. But he replied to him with love. And the situation went away. Right? So it's not that it completely resolved the situation, but it at least it dissipated the situation. So in practical example, we also see the person who have high in EQ, they know. They may not be spiritually based, but because they're emotionally mature, they know that when the other person is angry, then the person is hurting. That, like they say, right? And anger is an implicit statement made by the person that to the other person that you have the ability to hurt me. So the person is showing his own vulnerability. Right? Why is the person angry? Because he's accepting the fact that you have the power to put me in a situation where I'm losing control of my senses. So much power the person is giving the other person, right? So people respond to it by saying, okay, let's pacify the situation and then reason. So that's essentially what the message that this pastime is giving to us. One of the messages, many messages. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Some of your reasoning is like, I can't even think even how much time, like, how anger means, like, we are succumbed to the other person. So, and yeah, and it diffuses the situation. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
It also reminds me, Prabhu, about Kamsa and Vasudev. When Kamsa was angry, how Vasudev counteracted that anger by giving first logic and reasoning, and then finally said, I will give all the children that is born to me to you, with humility surrendered. So I was thinking that when you were talking about this, that came to my mind.
That's a very good example. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, we can continue with verse 6. Pura shrishthaya shadhyo brahmanaya vishampate bhujyaman maya drishta asadvira drita vratahe. My dear king, the seeds, roots, herbs and grains which were created by Lord Brahma in the past are now being used by non-devotees who are devoid of all spiritual understanding. So we now see that in 6 verses, from this verse 6 to verse 11, Mother Earth explains how she can be milked for various opulences. So in verses 6 and 7, she will once again explain the reason why she has hidden the grains. She had briefly alluded to it earlier on, and she's expanding on that. So the reason again is that the people that were residing on her were violating the principle of spiritual coexistence. The principle of yajna is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Non-devotees do not follow the cycle, and thus they do not get the share of grains. So Prabhupada says that in this verse, the word asabdavi and adrita vrutaye are important. The word asabdavi refers to non-devotees. The non-devotees have been described in the Bhagavad Gita as duskritina, miscreants, mudha, asses or rascals, naradhama, lowest of mankind, and maya partha jnana, those who have lost their intelligence to the power of the illusory energy. All these persons are asat, non-devotees. Non-devotees are also called grahavrata, whereas the devotees are called dritavrata. Later on, he says activities intended to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Lord Krishna are called Krishna Arte Khila Cheshta. This indicates that one can attempt all kinds of work, but one should do so to satisfy Krishna. This is described in Bhagavad Gita as Yagyathat Karma. The word Yagya indicates Lord Vishnu. We should only work for his satisfaction. In modern times, Kali Yuga, our people have forgotten Vishnu altogether, and they conduct their activities for sense gratification. Such people will gradually become poverty-stricken, for they cannot use things which are to be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord for their own sense gratification. If they continue like this, there will ultimately be a state of poverty, and no grains, fruits, or flowers will be produced. Indeed, it is stated in the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam that at the end of Kali Yuga, people will be so polluted, there will no longer be any grains, wheat, sugar cane, or milk. So one may wonder that these symptoms that are being described by Prabhupada are manifesting in the later part of Kali Yuga, whereas this conversation is happening in Satyuga, where the four principles are said to be intact. So the understanding in these situations is that when it says that in Satyuga the four principles are intact, that is the typical situation, or that is the dominant situation. So like in Kali Yuga, they say that there is no austerity, no purity, no mercy. But there are also devotees. So if somebody later on would read about Kali Yuga and read about Srila Prabhupada or devotees, then they might say, how is this possible? That in the age of Kali, where it is said that all these principles are destroyed, how come there was chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra? How come there was somebody who was as munificent as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because what this condition describes are the dominant situations. That typically the majority of the people in the age of Kali will be in that situation. Similarly, yes, in Satyuga, for the most part, the four principles are intact. But this is an aberration, which is why it is being discussed. Just like a person is in the mode of goodness, when that statement is made, it means that the person is predominantly in the mode of goodness. But we know that when the person is sleeping, is in the mode of ignorance. When the person might get angry once in a while, is in the mode of passion or ignorance. But when we say that this person is in Satogun, it means that is predominantly in the mode of goodness. So similarly, Vena was a big demon, and he was able to change the typical situation. Because of his demoniac influence, the Satyuga became almost like the later part of Kali Yuga. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that King Vena was such a big demon that he was not absorbed by the Lord. He didn't even get Savijya Mukti. So Shishupal and Kamsha, they were killed by the Lord and they got some form of Mukti. Shishupal actually entered the body. But Vena was such a big demon that he did not even get that mercy. He was killed by the curse of the Brahman and he went to a hellish condition. So he makes this point to show that, yes, because of the influence of such a demoniac person, the course of Satyuga was temporarily altered. Okay, verse 7. Apalita nadakrita cha bhavadbirlokapalakah choribhute talokeham yagyarthe grasmannasadhi. My dear king, not only are the grains and herbs being used by non-devotees, but as far as I am concerned, I am not being properly maintained. Indeed, I am being neglected by the kings who are not punishing these rascals who have turned into thieves by using grains for sense gratification. Consequently, I have hidden all these seeds which were meant for the performance of sacrifice. So, Mother Earth is mentioning two things here. One is that she is not being properly maintained. And second, that the people are using her grains without first offering it to Lord Vishnu. And then she connects the two by saying that I am being neglected by the kings who are not punishing these rascals. So what does this mean? That the proper maintenance of Mother Earth is derived from offering the grains to the Lord. So as a devotee, she is performing her prescribed duty of producing grains for the sustenance of the general populace. However, her duty remains incomplete until those grains are first offered to the Lord in yajna, which is why she is saying that I am not being properly maintained, because the grains that I'm producing, which are meant for being offered to the Lord, are not being offered to the Lord. So Prabhupada says that the word Chori Bhute indicates that the population has turned to thievery. According to Vedic understanding, men are transformed into thieves when they plan economic development for sense gratification. So Prabhupada gives the Vedic interpretation of thievery. So generally speaking, you would say a person is a thief when he is stealing somebody else's wealth. But Prabhupada is using the Ishavasya principle that if you are stealing, if you're taking from the Lord what is not meant for you, then you are a thief. That's why I say by Vedic understanding, when they're planning economic development for sense gratification. So the opposite of this is when you're planning economic development for the Lord's gratification. That's how one becomes not a thief. And then Prabhupada quotes again that verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yagashishta Sanasanta Muchante Sarkil Vishal, that only by offering the grains to the Lord does one become relieved of any possible sins. But those who are eating only for their own gratification, they are eating sin. Prabhupada says that unless one eats prasad, he is certainly a thief. Okay, go to verse 8. Nunam ta virudkshina Maikalena bhuyasa tatra yogena drishtena bhavanadatumarhati. Due to being stocked for a very long time, all the grain seeds within me have certainly deteriorated. Therefore, you should immediately arrange to take these seeds out by the standard process, which is recommended by the acharyas or shastras. So in 4 verses from 8 to 11, Mother Earth will now tell how to take out the grains. So 2 things are clear from this verse, that hoarding is harmful to the person who is hoarding. That Mother Earth says that I'm hoarding these grains, but they're actually deteriorating. So I'm not getting any benefit out of it. Deteriorating means that they are harming her, and others are obviously not getting benefit out of it. So one should always try to use the things in their proper constitutional position. It's like Sukadeva Goswami makes this point, that, or rather, it's not Sukadeva Goswami, it's the sages who make this point, that what is the use of eyes that do not see the deities? What is the use of feet that do not go to holy places? What is the use of the tongue that does not chant the holy name? Right? And they say that these are all completely useless. So similar point is made by Mother Earth, that I'm not getting any pleasure, no benefit. In fact, because I'm hoarding these grains, my situation is bad. And then she says that, Prabhupada says that, two significant words are used over here, yogena, drishtena. So drishtena means that as exemplified by the former acharyas, and yogena is by the approved method. So Prabhupada uses this in the context of farming. He says that modern day farming uses many mechanical means while they neglect the traditional methods given in the scriptures. And it's kind of interesting that at least I have witnessed this swing in my own lifetime. That when I was younger, studying in school, then there was so much of glorification of mechanized farming. The use of fertilizer, the use of chemicals, the use of this gene altering. And there was so much of anticipation that by this, so much more crops can be produced, and by grafting or by gene manipulation, so much can be done. And now, if you go to the store now, you have to pay more money for food that has an organic label on it, which means that it has been produced without the use of any chemicals. Or they say the food is, what is it they say? Bioengineered food, what do they call the particular name? GMO, right? GMO. They say this is non-GMO food. So you have to pay more for it. Essentially what they're saying is now we are using traditional way of growing food. We are using traditional stock to grow. So it's more expensive because it is better. Right? So you can see that swing, we can see that swing happening in our own lifetime. So short-term gains, long-term, they're finding is not good. Food that is GMO, food that is too much chemically grown, causing health problems. There's so much research that says that people who are on a consistently vegetarian diet are less prone to cancer. These are doctors who are making these statements. People with big PhDs, they're making this statement that naturally grown food, non-modified food is the key to good health. So Prabhupada makes this point that this modern day farming, it's an aberration. And eventually, the traditional methods given in the scriptures need to be adopted. So the verse also indicates that by the arrangement of Lord Krishna, nature also feels fulfilled when it is being used for the purpose for which it has been created. So there is a difference between exploitation and coexistence. That Mother Earth, Krishna has created her for that purpose, that she produces grains. And when she's producing grains that are being used in the proper way, she's feeling fulfilled, and the person who is using the grains is feeling fulfilled. That is the coexistence. However, when people are forcibly extracting grains from her by using artificial means, then neither is Mother Earth going to feel satisfied, nor will the people be satisfied. They may have short-term gains like I'm getting so much out of so little, but ultimately they have to pay the price. Okay. I'll do 2 more verses, and then after that, I'll pause for discussion. Vatsam kalpaya me vera yenaham vatsala tava dokshase krishmayan kama Anurupam chadohanam Dogtram cha mahabao Bhutanam bhutabhavana Annam epshitam urjasva Bhagwan vanchate yadi. O great hero, protector of living entities, if you desire to relieve the living entities by supplying them sufficient grain, and if you desire to nourish them by taking milk from me, you should make arrangements to bring a calf suitable for this purpose and a pot in which the milk can be kept, as well as a milkman to do the work. Since I will be very much affectionate towards my calf, your desire to take milk from me will be fulfilled. So now Mother Earth is giving the process to Prithu Maharaj that how can he extract those things that she has in her for the welfare of the others. So Mother Earth talks about three things. She talks about a calf, talks about a pot, and talks about a milkman. So even if you go to a Goshala, you will see that these three things are happening. That in order to start the flow of milk, first the calf is bought. And now they don't allow that much, but traditionally the calf was first allowed to drink its full. And because the cow typically produces a lot more milk than the calf needs, so then after the calf had drunk its fill, then the milkman would milk it. But now they generally use the calf to get the milk going, and then they take the calf away. But the calf essentially starts that affection, the feeling of affection, the milk going. Then the milkman is the one that actually milks the cow, and the pot is that in which the milk is kept. So we'll see later on that in the descendants of Maharaj Prithu, there appears Maharaj Gaya. And he was such a wonderful king that Mother Earth was so much attracted by the qualities of the king that she produced everything in abundance. And the king used all of it for his citizens. So in that chapter also, the king is compared to the calf, and the Mother Earth is compared to the cow, and the milk is compared to the affection of the Mother Earth towards the king. Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that these are nice instructions for milking a cow. The cow must first have a calf. Out of affection, she voluntarily gives sufficient milk. There must also be an expert milkman and a suitable pot in which to keep the milk. Just as a cow cannot deliver sufficient milk without being affectionate to a calf, the earth cannot produce sufficient necessities without feeling affection for those who are Krishna conscious. Even though the earth's being is in the shape of a cow, may be taken figuratively. The meaning here is very explicit. Just as a calf can derive milk from a cow, all living entities, including birds, animals, reptiles, aquatics, can receive their respective foods from the planet Earth, provided the human beings are not asat or adratvrata, as they have previously discussed. So Prabhupada is also giving an indication that this is figurative. That we'll see later on that Swayambhavu Manu becomes the calf, and somebody becomes the milkman, and something becomes a pot, and the milk is something. So it does not necessarily mean that Swayambhavu Manu, he took the form of a calf and started drinking the milk from Mother Earth. But essentially what it means is that this principle was being enacted. What's the principle? That when the person is properly situated, then he invokes the affection. And out of affection, one gives that which is for the benefit of the person. So the case of the affection of the cow being invoked by the calf is the affection of Mother Earth being invoked when the supplicant is properly situated, which means properly situated in Krishna consciousness. And then out of her affection, she gives what the supplicant desires. That's something I will see later. Okay, so I'll pause over here and see what discussion we have.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, the one thing that I've always trying to explain. So the question is, how can we explain this, that sacrifice to Vishnu gives rise to the nature's bounty in a relatable term to a modern person who cannot connect these things? So how can we, is there a way to explain this? Because quite often it feels like one has to have a leap of faith in order to see that people performing sacrifices, and then the rain comes and the grains come and all those things. And those who don't have that kind of a background, how can we explain this to those people?
So especially in the current environment, Prabhu, it's not a very difficult thing to do. Like if you look around, there is the pandemic going on, there is the war going on between two countries, which has the possibility of spilling over. There is weather extremities that's going on. We are in April right now, and the temperature, at least here, is below freezing. So it's supposed to be spring. Next week is supposed to be spring, and the temperature here is below freezing here. So people are commenting on it. They're recognizing the fact, live in difficult times. Now, it's said that even a stopwatch tells the correct time twice a day, right? If a watch is stopped at, let's assume, 3 p.m. or 3 o'clock, then 2 times in a day, it will tell the right time, 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. So even when there is adversities, there may be some glimpses of prosperity. But it's not a pervasive symptom there. So it's not that devotees want to create this doom and gloom, that everything is going down the drain, everything is bad. But what devotees can do is to contrast the situation that is happening right now to even when maybe a few hundred years ago, when there was less technology and more spirituality. People were living in much more peaceful environments. Even the so-called tyrants, their scope of destruction was limited. Prabhupada would say the armies would fight. They would never attack the civilians. But now, we see how this, they're actually targeting hospitals and schools. So how much more demoniac and the collective consciousness of a country becomes? So all the symptoms of the time. Now, the fact that the cure to this is Krishna consciousness, that is a leap of faith. Right? So that is something that can only be practiced. So one has to, it's not very difficult to tell a person that we live in difficult times, but it may be difficult to tell the person that Krishna consciousness is the solution to it. And that leap of faith can only be transcended by asking the person that, why don't you try it? What is the harm? Things are bad, it can't go worse. But what's the harm? Take to chanting, take to eating vegetarian food, living the mode of goodness. And when the person does that, they will experience it for themselves. It's not that the world around you changes, but how the world impacts you changes. And once they get the taste of it, if they're fortunate, then they will persevere.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. We were talking about the milkman. Nowadays, we don't think where they make the milk in mass. There's no more milkmen. They use machine to pump out the milk. And there's no cow thing. There's all type of trick that they do nowadays. As if the milk is not milk anymore. We don't even know what they are.
You're right, Prabhu. For the most part, yes. But Krishna never completely abandons us, right? So take our situation, right? We do have a milkman. We do have milk. And maybe we are not perfect as a calf, but we are trying to be a good calf. So if Krishna would completely abandon us, there would be no hope for us. So even in the most desolate situations, he is still extending himself. In the age of Kali, doing austerities is difficult, knowledge is difficult. So simply by chanting, one makes tremendous progress, right? So this is Krishna reaching out to us. Like let's say that Mahaprabhu, Krishna was attracting people towards him. Mahaprabhu was running after people who were turning away from him. A sign of his mercy. So while you're right that predominantly, yes, there's a lack of all the three, lack of a cow milk and calf and milkman. But but it's not that they're completely absent. For the one who is a sincere seeker, they're still available. That's our hope.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna.
Hare